The solvent smelled like artificial lemons and very real despair. Noah pushed the industrial polisher across the lobby floor of the Zephyr Towers, the low hum of the machine vibrating up through the soles of his boots and settling into his teeth. It was 3 in the morning, the witching hour for people who had failed to launch, for the ghosts of the city, and for 28-year-old men who had a degree in stellar cartography coding but spent their nights erasing scuff marks left by boots that cost more than his rent. Above him, the ceiling of the atrium was a faux glass dome projecting a loop of a sunny, cloudless sky. A cruel joke considering the real sky outside was a bruised purple bruise of smog and neon light. A holographic billboard flickered near the security desk, featuring a woman with silver skin and 4 eyes blinking seductively. "Upgrade your vision," the ad whispered in a voice that seemed to originate inside the center of his skull. "See the spectrum you were missing. Financing available for those with qualifying genetic scores." Noah did not have a qualifying genetic score. Noah had a credit score that looked like a countdown to 0, and a genetic profile that was aggressively, painfully average. He was the default setting in a world of customized avatars. He wrestled the polisher into the corner and wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of a gloved hand. His wrist terminal buzzed. It was a notification from the freelance coding board he checked obsessively. Job closed. Position filled by AI subroutine Alpha 9. Of course it was. Noah let out a breath that was half a laugh and half a sigh. He walked over to the service elevator, dragging the heavy gray trash bin with him. The wheels squeaked, a rhythmic shrieking that echoed in the empty, polished lobby. This was his life: squeaky wheels, fake skies, and rejection letters from algorithms. He punched the button for the sub-basement. Nothing happened. He punched it again. "The service elevator is currently undergoing maintenance," a pleasant synthetic voice announced from the wall panel. "Please use the secondary service exit located in the rear alleyway." Noah stared at the panel. The rear alleyway was 10 floors down via the fire stairs, or a trek through the labyrinthine cargo bays that smelled of ozone and rotting hydroponic vegetables. "Great," Noah said to the empty room. "Just great." He opted for the cargo bays. It took him 20 minutes to navigate the corridors, dragging the heavy bin behind him. The air grew colder the further he went from the residential sectors. The walls here were not polished marble but raw concrete, stained with the weeping rust of a building that was slowly decaying from the inside out. As he walked, he passed a row of flickering screens mounted on the wall for the maintenance crew. The news feed was playing a segment about the recent atmospheric disturbances. A reporter with hair sculpted into a rigid fin was speaking with frantic intensity. "Reports of unauthorized entry into the upper atmosphere are being dismissed by the global defense grid as meteor showers," the reporter said. "However, amateur skywatchers claim to have seen vessels that defy known aerodynamics. Some are calling them tourists. Others are calling them an invasion." Noah snorted. Tourists. As if anyone from a civilization advanced enough to travel the stars would want to visit Earth. Earth was the bad neighborhood of the galaxy. You rolled up your windows and locked your doors when you flew past Earth. He reached the heavy steel doors of the rear loading dock. He slammed his hip against the release bar, and the door groaned open, spilling him out into the alley. The sensory assault was immediate. The alley smelled of wet cardboard, frying grease from the noodle shop 3 blocks over, and the metallic tang of recycled rain. The city loomed above him, a canyon of steel and glass rising so high that the tops of the buildings disappeared into the low-hanging chemical clouds. Neon signs bled colors onto the wet pavement: electric blues, acid greens, and warning reds. Noah dragged the bin over to the row of massive waste compactors. He began the ritual of heaving the black bags into the maw of the machine. 1 bag, 2 bags, 3 bags. Each one landed with a wet thud. The last bag snagged on the lip of the bin. Noah yanked it free, hearing the plastic tear, and tossed it in. He wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, feeling the grime that never really seemed to wash off. "I was just taking out the trash," he muttered to himself, kicking the wheel of the empty bin. He leaned back against the brick wall of the tower, taking a moment to breathe the unfiltered air. He looked up. Through a rare break in the neon haze and the smog, he could see a patch of actual night sky. There were a few stars visible, faint and struggling, like diamonds drowning in muddy water. He wondered if there was anyone up there. He wondered if, 1,000 light years away, there was another guy standing behind a space station taking out the space trash, looking back at Noah's son and wondering the same thing. Probably not. That guy probably had a robot to do the trash. That guy probably had a life that meant something. Noah felt the familiar ache in his chest, the heavy stone of regret he carried around. He had played it safe his whole life. He had taken the steady job instead of the risky internship. He had stayed in the city instead of moving to the colonies. He shrank himself to fit into rooms, apologized when people bumped into him, and kept his head down. And what did he get for it? He got to be the king of the alleyway at 3 in the morning. "I was just taking out the trash," he said again, testing the words. They sounded like an epitaph. Here lies Noah. He took out the trash. He paid his bills. He died. The air changed. It did not happen gradually. 1 second. The alley was filled with the damp, heavy atmosphere of the city. The next second, the air pressure dropped so sharply his ears popped. The ambient noise of the metropolis, the distant sirens, the hum of hover cars, the thrum of the ventilation fans, vanished, replaced by a silence so absolute it felt heavy. Then came the sound. It was a low, vibrating thrum, like a cello bow being drawn across a cable made of pure energy. It vibrated in Noah's molars. He pushed himself off the wall, his heart hammering a sudden, frantic rhythm against his ribs. "What on earth?" Noah whispered. 10 feet away from him, in the dead center of the alley, the air split open. It was a vertical tear, a jagged wound in reality itself. It did not look like a door opening. It looked like someone had taken a knife to a painting and slashed the canvas. Inside the tear, there was no light, only a swirling, chaotic darkness that seemed to possess depth and texture, like oil on water. Mist poured out of the fracture. It was not steam. It was cold, heavy, and smelled distinctively of ozone and copper, the smell of a thunderstorm trapped in a bottle. Noah stood frozen. His brain was screaming at his legs to move, to run back inside the loading dock and lock the door, but his body refused to acknowledge the command. He was paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of what he was seeing. A hand gripped the edge of the darkness. It was a pale hand, the fingers long and elegant, tipped with nails that looked like dark glass. Then a boot stepped out onto the wet pavement of the alley. It was made of a material Noah had never seen, shifting between matte black and a deep, iridescent purple as it caught the neon light. The figure emerged. She was tall, taller than Noah, with a lithe, predatory grace that made her seem like she was moving underwater while the rest of the world was stuck in heavy gravity. She wore a long, flowing cloak that seemed to be woven from shadows, shifting and swirling around her ankles even though there was no wind. Beneath the cloak, she wore armor that looked organic, plates of dark chitin hugging a torso that was impossibly slender. But it was her face that stole the breath from Noah's lungs. She was terrifyingly beautiful. Her skin was the color of moonlight on snow, luminous and pale. Her hair was a dark, liquid cascade that floated slightly around her head, defying physics. And her eyes were burning garnets, glowing with an inner red light that illuminated the sharp, aristocratic angles of her cheekbones. She stood there, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling beneath the strange armor. She scanned the alley, her gaze darting from the overflowing dumpsters to the fire escapes, finally landing on Noah. She froze. The glowing red eyes locked onto him. Noah felt the weight of that stare like a physical touch. It was not the look of a human seeing another human. It was the look of a wolf seeing a rabbit, or perhaps a starving man seeing a banquet. She took a step toward him. Noah backed up, his boots slipping on the slick pavement. He hit the brick wall behind him. There was nowhere to go. The woman inhaled sharply. Her nostrils flared, her lips parted, and Noah saw the glint of long, elegant fangs. They were not the clumsy prosthetic fangs the goth kids wore at the underground clubs. These were needle-sharp, retractable, and very, very real. She moved closer. She moved so fast Noah barely saw it happen. One moment she was 10 feet away, and the next she was standing right in front of him, looming over him. She did not smell like the alley. She smelled like cold iron, static electricity, and something floral that had been frozen in ice. She leaned in, her face inches from his neck. Noah squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the bite, waiting for the end. "You smell like home," she whispered. Her voice was low, husky, and carried a strange resonance, as if two people were speaking in unison. Noah opened his eyes. She was pulling back slightly, looking at him with an expression of profound confusion and intense hunger. What?" Noah squeaked. His voice cracked. He sounded pathetic. She tilted her head, her dark hair drifting around her face like smoke. "You," she said, her red eyes searching his face. "You smell like the home world, like the life fields before the burning." Noah stared at her. His brain was misfiring, trying to categorize this data and failing. Alien, vampire, hallucination, stroke. "I was just taking out the trash," Noah stammered, the words tumbling out of his mouth without his permission. The woman's eyes widened slightly. A flicker of amusement crossed her terrifying features. "You were just taking out trash," she repeated. Her voice wasn't just in the air, it echoed inside his mind, clear and bell-like. "Until I arrived." Noah's knees gave out. He slid down the brick wall, landing hard on his backside. He scrambled backward, crab-walking away from her, kicking over a pile of empty cardboard boxes. "Stay back," Noah gasped. I have a radio. I have pepper spray." He did not have pepper spray. He had a half-eaten protein bar and a multi-tool in his pocket. The woman did not seem threatened. She watched him scramble with a look of mild curiosity. She took another step toward him, her movements fluid and silent. "Do not fear, little one," she said. "I simply wish to know how a creature of dirt and refuse carries the resonance of the High Court in his blood." "Creature of dirt?" Noah managed to say, indignation warring with terror. "Hey, I am a sanitation engineer." Technically behind the woman, the tear in reality rippled violently. 3 figures materialized from the empty air, decloaking like shimmering water settling into solid form. They were massive. They wore full helmets that obscured their faces, and heavy, jagged armor that looked like it had been grown rather than forged. They held weapons that looked like pikes made of solid light, humming with a low, menacing energy. Noah stopped moving. He stared at the 3 giants. "Are those with you?" Noah asked, his voice trembling. "My Praetorian Guard," the woman said, not looking back at them. Her focus remained entirely on Noah. They are edgy. They do not like this world. It smells of decay. Join the club, Noah muttered hysterically. One of the guards stepped forward, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding stones. He gestured toward the tear in reality, urgent and sharp. The woman waved a hand dismissively. Peace, Kalen. We have found something. She reached a hand down toward Noah. Stand up, she commanded. It was not a request. It was an order that plucked at Noah's nervous system, bypassing his conscious brain. He found himself scrambling to his feet before he had even decided to do so. Who are you? Noah asked, pressing his back against the brick wall again. What are you? I am Lyra, she said. She straightened her spine, and for a moment, the dingy alley seemed to transform into a throne room. I am the sovereign of the Noctur, the keeper of the Sanguine Pact. And you? You are a puzzle I intend to solve. Noctur? Noah repeated. Like nocturnal? Like vampires? A faint smile touched her lips, revealing the tips of those terrifying fangs. We are older than your myths, human. We drank the light of dead stars while your ancestors were still learning to bang rocks together. She stepped closer again, inhaling deeply. That scent, it is impossible. You are human. Your biology is crude, fragile, short-lived, and yet, your biosignature sings. It matches the atmospheric resonance of the imperial city. She reached out and touched his cheek. Her skin was freezing cold. Noah flinched, but he did not pull away. He couldn't. He was paralyzed by the intensity of her gaze. You are a key, Lyra murmured, a living key hidden in the garbage. Suddenly, a high-pitched scream tore through the air, coming from the sky above. Lyra's head snapped up. The amusement vanished from her face, replaced by a cold, deadly focus. They found us, she hissed. The three guards instantly formed a perimeter around Lyra and Noah, their light pikes flaring to blinding brilliance. Who found us? Noah shouted, looking up. Above the alley, the smog clouds were blown apart by three sleek black machines. They looked like predatory birds made of chrome and glass. Their wings swept forward. Red searchlights swept the alley, blindingly bright. Hunter drones, one of the guards roared in English, his voice synthesized and deep. House Valor sends his dogs. The drones opened fire. Beams of neon green energy slammed into the pavement, exploding the dumpsters and sending showers of molten metal and burning trash into the air. The force of the blast threw Noah sideways. He hit the ground hard, rolling through a puddle of oily water. Get him, Lyra commanded. One of the guards lunged for Noah, grabbing him by the back of his jumpsuit and hauling him up as if he weighed nothing. Let me go, Noah yelled, thrashing. I am just the janitor. I do not know anything about star vampires. The alley dissolved into chaos. The drones swooped lower, their engines screaming. The air grew heavy and distorted. Noah felt his stomach lurch as gravity seemed to twist. The trash cans started floating upward, spinning slowly. Rainwater rose from the puddles in spherical droplets. Gravity distorters, the guard holding Noah shouted. They are trying to collapse the rift. Lyra drew a weapon from beneath her cloak. It was a long, curved blade that glowed with a dark, violet energy. She leapt into the air, defying the twisted gravity, and slashed at the nearest drone. The blade passed through the metal hull of the machine like it was smoke. The drone exploded in a silent puff of fire and debris. She landed gracefully in front of Noah, her eyes blazing. We must leave, Lyra said, grabbing Noah's arm. Her grip was iron. Leave, Noah shouted over the roar of the engines. Go where? Home, she said, or at least as close as we can get. She began to drag him toward the shimmering tear in the wall. No, no, No! Noah dug his heels in, sliding across the wet pavement. I am not going in there. That is a hole in reality. I have a shift tomorrow. I have a cat. He did not have a cat. He wanted a cat, but his building did not allow pets. Why was he lying about a cat right now? The remaining 2 drones banked around and unleashed a torrent of energy bolts. The guard holding the perimeter was struck, his shield flared and shattered, and he was thrown backward into the brick wall, crumpling to the ground. We are out of time, Lyra yelled. She did not ask again. She wrapped her arm around Noah's waist and jumped. The sensation was sickening. It felt like being pulled through a straw. The world stretched and warped. The colors of the neon signs smeared into long, bright lines. The sound of the battle faded into a dull roar. Noah looked back one last time. He saw the alleyway, the overturned dumpsters, the floating trash, and the dead guard. He saw the world he had known for 28 years, the safe, boring, gray world where he was invisible and nothing ever happened. He saw it fold in on itself, crumpling like a piece of paper being crushed by a giant hand. The cold mist of the rift swallowed him. The metallic smell filled his lungs. The last thing he heard was his own voice, echoing in the terrified silence of his own mind. I was just taking out the trash. And then the darkness took him. The transition was not instantaneous. It was a violent tumbling through a tunnel of kaleidoscope light and crushing pressure. Noah felt like he was being unmade and then knitted back together by someone who had lost the instructions. He hit the floor hard. It was not the wet pavement of the alley. It was a smooth, cold surface that felt like polished obsidian. He slid a few feet and came to a stop, gasping for air. His lungs burned. His vision swam with spots of purple and green. He scrambled to his hands and knees, retching dryly. Easy, a voice said. The first crossing is always rough on the uninitiated. Noah looked up, blinking tears from his eyes. He was in a cavernous space. The ceiling was lost in shadows high above, but he could see veins of bioluminescent blue light pulsing in the walls, like the heartbeat of a massive organism. The architecture was sharp, angular, and terrifyingly alien. Floating platforms drifted silently through the air. Lyra stood over him. Her cloak was singed at the edges. She sheathed her violet blade with a snap. Where are we? Noah wheezed. The undercourt, Lyra said, looking around with a weary expression. My kingdom of exiles. She reached down and offered him a hand again. This time, the terrifying hunger was gone from her eyes, replaced by a guarded curiosity. Welcome to the bottom of the world? Noah, she said. Noah stared at her hand. He looked at her pale skin, the faint glow of the veins in the walls, and the impossible geometry of the room. He thought about his credit score. He thought about the scuff marks on the lobby floor. He thought about the silence of his empty apartment. He took her hand. She pulled him up. He stood there, swaying slightly, covered in alley grime and smelling of garbage, standing next to a queen who looked like she was carved from starlight and blood. You still smell like home, she noted, wrinkling her nose slightly, but also significantly like rotting vegetation. That would be the trash, Noah said, his voice finding a hysterical edge. The trash I was taking out. Before you kidnapped me, I saved you, she corrected calmly. There is a difference. She turned and began to walk toward a massive set of double doors at the far end of the chamber. Come, she called over her shoulder. We have much to discuss, and I imagine you will want to wash before the council sees you. Noah watched her walk away. He looked down at his boots. He looked back at the space where the portal had been. Now just a blank wall of dark stone. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. I was just taking out the trash, he whispered to the alien air, until the vampire queen said, "You smell like home." He shook his head, took a deep breath of the cold metallic air, and followed her into the dark. The darkness did not last forever, though for Noah, it felt like an eternity spent inside a washing machine set to a spin cycle of existential dread. When the sensation of falling finally ceased, it was replaced by a sudden jarring return of gravity that felt slightly too heavy, as if the planet had gained a few trillion tons of mass in his absence. Noah stumbled, his boots skidding on a floor that was smoother than glass and blacker than the bottom of the ocean. He flailed, trying to find a handhold, but his fingers only met slick, cool surfaces. He collapsed onto his hands and knees, gasping for air that smelled of ozone, crushed flowers, and static electricity. "Get up," Lyra said. Her voice was not breathless. It was calm, composed, and terrifyingly regal. Noah looked up, his jaw unhinged. They were not in a cave. They were not in a spaceship, at least not one that made any sense to his human engineering degree. They were standing on a suspended promenade of dark, translucent crystal that spiraled outward into a city that defied every law of architecture Noah had ever learned. The undercourt was a sprawl of impossible spires and floating platforms, suspended inside a colossal, hollowed-out sphere. Above them, through the translucent ceiling of the containment field, Noah could see the swirling, thick gray vapor of the industrial clouds that blanketed the lower atmosphere of his city. They were hiding in plain sight, tucked inside the pollution layer like a pearl inside a toxic oyster. The buildings of the court were grown, not built. They were formed of obsidian-like material laced with veins of pulsing, bioluminescent violet light. Bridges made of hard light connected the spires, and figures, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, moved with fluid grace along the walkways. We are in the clouds," Noah managed to say, his voice echoing in the vast space. "We are in the blind spot of your world," Lyra corrected. She swept past him, her cloak billowing like smoke. "This is the orbital platform Ethelgard, or what is left of it. To your governments, it is a decommissioned atmospheric processing station. To us, it is the last sanctuary." Noah scrambled to his feet, wiping his palms on his jumpsuit. He felt absurdly underdressed in his stained gray uniform. He was a janitor standing in the Hall of the Gods. Lyra did not look back. She walked with a stiff, focused cadence, her head held high. To Noah, she looked like a conqueror. But if he had been looking closer, past the terrifying beauty and the glowing red eyes, he might have seen the tension in her shoulders. He might have seen the way her hand trembled slightly before she clenched it into a fist at her side. She was the vampire queen, the sovereign of the Noctur. But she was also a refugee captain trying to keep a sinking ship afloat. Every step she took was a performance of strength for the subjects watching from the shadows of the spires. They needed her to be invincible, so she pretended she did not feel the ache of the hunger gnawing at her insides or the fear that the hunter drones had followed them. "Come," Lyra commanded, "do not dawdle. The council is already assembling, and I must determine what you are before they decide to simply dissect you." "Dissect me?" Noah squeaked. He jogged to catch up with her long strides. "Is that a joke? That is a joke, right? Alien humor?" Lyra stopped abruptly in front of a massive set of doors that appeared to be made of woven thorns and metal. The doors recognized her biosignature and groaned open, revealing a chamber that was both a laboratory and a throne room. She gestured for him to enter. Noah hesitated, looking at the dark interior. "I have rights," Noah said weakly. "I think, does the Geneva Convention apply in orbit?" Lyra seized his arm. Her grip was gentle but firm, like a steel trap wrapped in velvet. She pulled him inside. The chamber was circular, dominated by a central dais where a complex array of floating holographic glyphs rotated in the air. The walls were lined with living vines that glowed with a soft, amber light, their leaves twitching as if they were listening to the conversation. In the center of the room was a chair that looked uncomfortably like an operating table. "Sit," Lyra said, pointing to the chair. Noah sat. He kept his hands visible, a habit from growing up in the rougher parts of the city. Lyra paced around him, the glyphs spinning faster as she waved her hand through the data streams. "Who were your parents?" she asked, her back to him. "My dad drove a delivery truck," Noah said. "My mom was a waitress. They died in the flu outbreak of '42. Neither of them were space vampires, if that is what you are asking." Lyra turned, her eyes narrowing. "Eyes? Any history of blood disorders? Anemia? Strange reactions to sunlight?" "No," Noah said. I burn easy. I need SPF 50. Is that a symptom?" She ignored his deflection. "Dreams. Tell me about your dreams. Do you dream of a red sun? Do you dream of cities made of singing glass?" "I dream about showing up to work without my pants," Noah said. "And sometimes I dream I am falling. That is about it." "Look, lady, Lyra, your highness. I am just a guy. I fix code and I clean floors. There is nothing special about me." Lyra stopped pacing. She walked up to him, placing her hands on the armrests of the chair, trapping him. She leaned in close, and the scent of her, cold rain and ozone, filled his head. "You are wrong," she said softly. She tapped a sequence into the air, and a hologram materialized between them. It showed a double helix of DNA, but it was wrong. It had a third strand, a ghostly, shimmering thread woven through the standard human code. "This is you," Lyra said. She pointed to the third strand. "And this is a resonance echo. It is a fragment of the Noctur core." Noah stared at the floating image. That is impossible. "It should be," Lyra agreed. "Generations ago, before the Great Fracture, my people visited this world. We were not refugees then. We were explorers. Some of the high houses believed that our own world was dying. They sought to preserve our essence. They performed experiments, gene modifications on primitive human populations. They tried to create a vessel that could hold our consciousness if our bodies failed." Noah felt a cold chill slide down his spine. "You mean a backup drive?" "I am a backup drive for a dead alien?" Lyra shook her head. "The experiments were deemed a failure. The human mind was too fragile. It shattered under the weight of a Noctur soul. The project was abandoned, or so we thought. But you carry the marker. You are not just a vessel. Noah, you are a key. Your blood sings with the frequency of the High Court. That is why you smell like home. That is why the machines in the alley did not vaporize you instantly." Noah sat back, the information hitting him like a physical blow. He had spent his whole life feeling like he didn't belong, like he was out of step with the world around him. He thought it was anxiety. He thought it was just bad luck. "So," he said, his voice quiet, "I am a genetic mutant. Great. Can I put that on my resume?" Before Lyra could answer, the doors to the chamber hissed open. 3 figures strode in. They were Noctur, tall and imposing, dressed in robes of deep crimson and charcoal. The first was a woman with skin like polished onyx and hair white as bone. She looked at Noah with open disgust. The second was a male, elderly by the looks of his withered features, leaning on a staff topped with a glowing crystal. The third was a warrior, wearing armor similar to Lyra's but scarred from battle. My queen, the onyx-skinned woman said, her voice sharp. You brought the human here, into the sanctum. He is not just a human. Valerius, Lyra said, straightening up and turning to face them. He is a resonance carrier. Valerius sneered. He is a primitive, a mud grub, and you risked our position to save him while 3 of our best guards lie dead in a trash alley. We cannot leave him, the elderly Noctur murmured, his voice wheezing. If Lord Valor finds him, he will peel him apart to get the codes. Valerius snapped. We should kill him now. Mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. Lyra? Noah raised his hand. Hi. Still in the room. Still can hear you. The warrior stepped forward. My queen. Valerius is harsh, but she speaks a truth. The engines of the Ethelguard are failing. We have barely enough power to maintain the cloak. If this human carries the core signature, we could drain him. We could use his bioenergy to jumpstart the terraformer. Noah's eyes went wide. The what former? Lyra stepped between Noah and her advisors. Her garnet eyes flared with a dangerous light. We are not murderers, she said, her voice dropping to a low growl. We are not Lord Valor. We do not consume the sentient to fuel our machines. We are starving, Valerius shouted, losing her composure. The court is weak. We need to feed, and Valor offers a solution. He speaks with the human leaders. He says they are willing to trade. Lyra went very still. What did you say? Valerius hesitated, realizing she had said too much. Speak, Lyra commanded. The vines on the walls hissed and writhed. Valor has made contact with the Earth Directorate, Valerius admitted sullenly. He has offered them the FTL drive technology. In exchange for hunting rights, designated zones, criminals, the homeless, the unwanted, a sustainable herd. Noah felt the blood drain from his face. He thought of the news reports about missing people. He thought of the way the cops never came to his neighborhood. A farm, Noah whispered. They want to turn us into a farm. Lyra looked stricken. The mask of the queen slipped, revealing the horrified woman beneath. Valor would sell our soul for a full belly, she whispered. And the humans. They would sell their own kind for engines they do not understand. She turned to her advisors. Leave us. My queen. Valerius started. Out, Lyra roared. The force of her voice sent a shockwave through the room, knocking the floating glyphs into chaos. The 3 advisors bowed stiffly and retreated, the heavy doors sealing behind them with a thud. Lyra sagged against the console. She looked exhausted. Her skin, usually luminous, looked gray and dim. She was trembling. Are you okay? Noah asked. It was a stupid question, but he didn't know what else to say. No, Lyra said. I am not. I expended too much essence in the fight. The jump through the rift, it cost me. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were dark, the red glow dimming to a faint ember. She looked at his neck, where the pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against his skin. I need to stabilize, she said. If I do not, I will go into a frenzy. And if I frenzy, I will not be able to stop myself from tearing this station apart. Noah swallowed hard. You need blood. I need resonance, she corrected. Bioenergy. Blood is merely the carrier. She took a step toward him. Noah didn't run. He couldn't. He was terrified, yes. But beneath the fear was a strange magnetic pull. It was the same feeling he had when he looked off the edge of the roof, the call of the void. I will not hurt you, Lyra said. I promise. But I must feed. Noah looked at her hands, which were shaking. He looked at the sharp points of her fangs. He thought about the advisors who wanted to drain him dry to start an engine. He thought about the human officials selling people like him for spare parts. She had saved him. She had stood between him and the monsters. "Okay," Noah said. His voice was barely a whisper. Lyra froze. "You consent?" "I consent," Noah said, "but ground rules, no killing me, no turning me into a zombie thrall, and you stop when I say stop." "I swear it by the void," Lyra whispered. She moved in. She did not grab him. She placed one hand gently on his shoulder and the other on the side of his face. Her touch was icy, but as her fingers brushed his skin, they began to warm. Noah tilted his head back, exposing his throat. His heart was thumping so loud he was sure she could hear it. Lyra lowered her head. She paused inches from his skin, inhaling his scent. "Thank you." She breathed against his neck, then she bit him. Noah expected pain. He expected the searing agony of a needle, but it wasn't pain. It was a sharp pinch followed by a rush of cold, electric euphoria. It felt like sticking his finger in a socket, but the electricity was liquid and heavy. He gasped, his hands gripping her waist instinctively to steady himself. He could feel her drinking, not just fluid, but something else. He felt a pulling sensation in the center of his chest, as if she were tugging on a thread attached to his soul. And then, the connection opened both ways. Images flooded Noah's mind. They were not his memories. He saw a sky of violet fire. He saw tall, crystalline spires shattering under the bombardment of dark ships. He felt a crushing, suffocating loneliness. He felt the weight of a crown that was too heavy for his head. He felt the desperate love for a people who looked at him with fear. She was drowning in responsibility. She was a child forced to play God. At the same time, Lyra gasped, her grip on his shoulder tightening. She was seeing him. She felt the hollow ache of his apartment. She felt the shame of hiding in the corners. She felt the stubborn, quiet pride he took in fixing a broken line of code. She felt his deep, starving need to be seen. The intimacy was overwhelming. It was closer than sex. It was two minds bleeding into each other. Noah's knees buckled. He squeezed her arm, hard. "Stop," he choked out. Lyra pulled away instantly. She staggered back, wiping a trace of red from her lip. Her eyes were blazing again, bright and terrifyingly alive. The gray cast to her skin was gone, replaced by a pearl-like luster. Noah slumped back into the chair, holding his hand over the small puncture wounds on his neck. They were already closing, sealing up as if they had never been there. "Whoa," Noah said. He felt dizzy, high, and completely drained all at once. That was a lot. Lyra looked at him with wide, shocked eyes. She looked like she had just seen a ghost. "You," she whispered. "You are so lonely." "Noah." "Pot." "Meat kettle," Noah muttered, trying to find his equilibrium. "I saw your house burning down. I saw how scared you are." Lyra looked away, shame flushing her pale cheeks. "A queen is not scared. A queen is a person," Noah said. He stood up, his legs shaky but holding. "And you taste like mint ice cream and sadness. Is that a Noctur thing?" Lyra stared at him, baffled. "You make jokes, even now, and if I stop joking, I start screaming." Noah said, "It is a coping mechanism." The moment stretched between them, charged with a new, terrifying tension. The barrier of species and station had been breached. They had been inside each other's heads. Noah looked at her lips, stained with his blood, and felt a sudden, irrational urge to kiss her. He shoved the thought down into the deepest basement of his mind and locked the door. Suddenly, the lights in the chamber flickered and turned red. A klaxon began to blare, a harsh, rhythmic grinding sound. Lyra's head snapped toward the door, the perimeter alarm. A holographic screen popped up in the air. It showed a grainy feed of the lower maintenance decks. Small spider-like robots were swarming through the vents, cutting cables and placing explosives. Maintenance drones? Noah squinted at the screen. Those are city utility drones, standard Model 6. They have been hacked, Lyra hissed. Valor's agents. They are breaching the stealth field generators. If the cloak falls, the human military will see us, and they will fire. We need to get to the hangar, Lyra said, grabbing her violet blade from the table. We cannot stay here. If Valor knows where we are, the station is already compromised. She grabbed Noah's hand. Run! They burst out of the chamber and into the corridor. The chaos was already spreading. Noctur guards were running past them, shouting orders. The floor beneath them shuddered as an explosion rocked the lower levels. The gravity stabilizers are failing, Lyra shouted over the din. As if on cue, the world tilted. The floor became the wall. Noah yelped as he slid sideways, scrambling to grab a railing. Lyra moved with supernatural agility, leaping from the wall to the ceiling, which was now the floor. She reached down and hauled Noah up. Keep moving. They ran through corridors that shifted and twisted like an M.C. Escher painting. Up was down, left was right. Noah's stomach was doing somersaults. They reached a junction where a heavy blast door was slowly closing, sparked by a hacked control panel. It is sealed, Lyra cried, slamming her fist against the metal. The override is dead. Noah looked at the panel. It was a standard Earth-Tech interface, crudely welded onto the alien metal. The conspiracy, humans and aliens working together. I can open it, Noah shouted. He dropped to his knees, ignoring the fact that he was technically kneeling on the wall. He pulled his multi-tool from his pocket and jammed it into the data port. Noah, we have seconds, Lyra warned, watching the corridor behind them where a swarm of the spider drones was skittering toward them, their welding torches glowing blue. I know. Just let me work. Noah's fingers flew across the holographic keypad he projected from his wrist terminal. The code was a mess, alien algorithms clumsily wrapped in C++. It was ugly, but he understood ugly. He recognized the syntax. It was the same sloppy coding used in the elevator systems at his building. If loop, then false, Noah muttered. Bypass security kernel. Execute command. Open sesame. The blast door groaned and halted its descent. Then, with a screech of protesting metal, it began to rise. Noah grabbed his tool and jumped up. Go! They slid under the door just as the drones opened fire with their torches. The metal door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the swarm. Lyra looked at him, impressed. You speak the machine language. I told you, Noah panted. I am a coder. I fix broken things. They sprinted down the final gangway and into a small, secluded hangar bay. Resting there was a sleek, silver vessel that looked more like a dagger than a ship. It was small, fast, and hummed with a low, predatory energy. The shadow skiff, Lyra said. It is fast and has an independent cloak. She tapped the hull, and the canopy hissed open. Get in! Noah climbed into the co-pilot seat. The interior was tight, smelling of leather and the same floral ozone scent as Lyra. Lyra vaulted into the pilot's seat and began tapping the controls. Where are we going? Noah asked, strapping himself in. There is an outpost, Lyra said as the engines whined to life. An archive buried in the ruins of the old city. The place where my ancestors first landed. If you are the key, Noah, then the lock is there. We need to find out what the core fragment inside you is meant to activate. The hangar bay doors opened, revealing the swirling gray clouds outside. Lyra punched the throttle. The skiff shot forward, blasting out of the station and into the turbulent atmosphere. They banked hard, diving through the clouds. Noah watched the sensor screen as the massive shape of the undercourt station vanished behind them, swallowed by the mist. We made it. Noah breathed. He slumped back in the seat. Lyra engaged the cloaking device, and the stars outside the canopy reappeared as the ship turned invisible. She set the autopilot and turned to look at him. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a quiet intimacy in the small cockpit. "You did well, Noah," she said, "for a janitor." Noah let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, I just wanted an ordinary life, you know? I wanted to pay off my student loans, maybe date a girl who didn't try to drink my blood. I wanted to be boring." Lyra looked at him, her garnet eyes soft. "I envy you," she said quietly. Noah looked at her. "You envy me? I scrub toilets. You have a spaceship and magic powers. I have a crown that is made of knives," Lyra said. "I have a people who are dying. I have a destiny that was written for me 500 years before I was born. I have never had a choice, Noah. I have never been able to just take out the trash." She looked out at the passing city lights below them. To be small, to be unnoticed, to be free. That sounds like a beautiful dream to me. Noah looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the loneliness he had felt through the bond. He saw a woman who was trapped in a golden cage, looking at his muddy, messy life and seeing freedom. "It isn't all it is cracked up to be," Noah said softly. "But it is better than being a battery for a terraforming engine." Lyra smiled. It was a small, genuine thing that transformed her face. It made her look less like a queen and more like the girl she might have been if the universe hadn't been so cruel. "We will find the truth, Noah," she said, "and I promise you, I will not let them turn you into a farm." Noah looked at her hand resting on the console. He reached out, hesitating for a second, and then covered her hand with his. "And I won't let them turn you into a monster," he said. Lyra turned her hand over, lacing her fingers with his. Her skin was cool, but his was warm. "Deal," she whispered. The skiff sped silently through the night, carrying a janitor and a queen toward the ruins of the past, bound together by a secret in the blood and a hunger that had nothing to do with food. The cloaked skiff descended through the subterranean layers of the city like a needle-piercing layers of infected skin. They left the bioluminescent wonder of the undercourt far behind, dropping into the ancient, forgotten roots of the metropolis here. The air recyclers had failed decades ago, and the atmosphere was thick with the taste of rust and stagnant water. This was the old sector. It was a graveyard of industry, a sprawling cavern of concrete pillars the width of redwood trees, holding up the glittering neon city above. Down here, there was no neon. There was only the sickly, bruised orange glow of sodium street lamps that had been burning since the 21st century, flickering over mountains of discarded machinery. Lyra landed the skiff on a jagged ridge of concrete that overlooked a crater. "We are here," she said, her voice tight. Noah looked out the canopy. In the center of the crater, half buried in the fossilized mud of a dried-up reservoir, lay the carcass of a starship. It did not look like the elegant glass spire architecture of the undercourt. This vessel was twisted, unrecognizable, a skeletal ribcage of black metal jutting out of the earth. Vines of copper wire and moss had overtaken it, binding the alien technology to the dead earth. "It looks like a corpse," Noah whispered. "It is," Lyra replied. "This is the Voidwalker Ethelgard, the ship that brought the first house to Earth. It crashed during the Great Exile. My ancestors did not land here. Noah, they fell. She popped the hatch. The smell hit them instantly, wet rot, oil, and the faint ozone tang of old magic bleeding out of the ship's batteries. Noah climbed out, his boots crunching on petrified plastic bottles and rubble. He shivered. The darkness down here felt heavy, pressing against his temples. Lyra moved across the debris field with infuriating grace. She stepped over rusted girders and pools of toxic sludge as if she were walking on a ballroom floor. Noah, by contrast, slipped on a patch of mossy concrete and windmilled his arms to stay upright. Careful, fragile thing, Lyra called back, not turning around. Your bones are made of chalk and water. Try not to shatter them before we reach the airlock. Noah regained his balance, wiping slime off his jumpsuit. I will have you know I have never broken a bone, Noah retorted, scrambling up a pile of rebar to catch up to her. I drink plenty of milk, and maybe if you offered a hand instead of floating around like a goth hovercraft, I would be faster. Lyra stopped at the edge of a massive tear in the ship's hull. She turned, a faint smirk playing on her lips. The orange streetlights reflected in her garnet eyes, making them burn like embers. A goth hovercraft, she mused. Is that a title of nobility in your culture? It means you are being dramatic, Noah said, breathless. You act like this is all a grand tragedy. We are walking through a junkyard. Lyra. It is not an opera, it is a tomb, Lyra said, her amusement vanishing as she touched the cold black metal of the ship. And tombs are always dramatic. She placed her palm against a panel that was barely visible beneath layers of grime. The metal groaned. A deep, subsonic thrum vibrated through the ground, shaking dust from the ceiling of the cavern far above. Recognition, a mechanical voice whispered from the walls. Not in English, but in the grinding tongue of the Noctur. But Noah understood it. The translation bloomed in his mind, a side effect of the blood bond, blood of the line detected. The voice rasped, "Welcome home, sovereign." A fissure opened in the hull, exhaling a breath of air that had been trapped inside for centuries. It smelled of dried spices and death. After you, Noah said, gesturing to the dark opening. Lyra stepped inside, igniting a small globe of violet light in her palm. Noah followed, sticking close to the light. The interior of the ship was tilted at a dangerous angle. They had to walk on the junction between the floor and the wall, stepping over crystallized remains of furniture and equipment. It was haunted. Noah could feel it, not with ghosts, but with memories. As they walked deeper into the belly of the ship, flashes of emotion sparked in his brain. Panic, the scream of failing engines, the sorrow of a mother clutching a child. Are you doing that? Noah asked, rubbing his temples. The broadcasting feelings thing? No, Lyra said softly. The ship is psycho-reactive. It remembers its death. Block it out. Noah, focus on my voice. They reached the central engineering bay. It was a cathedral of engineering, a vast spherical room where the walls were lined with dormant machinery. In the center, suspended by a web of organic-looking cables that pulsed with a faint, dying heartbeat, was a crystalline sphere the size of a small car. The heart engine, Lyra whispered, the memory core of the colony. It looks alive, Noah said. It is. Lyra replied, Noctur technology is grown, not built. It requires a biosignature to wake. She walked up to the sphere. She reached out to touch it, but her hand stopped inches from the surface. The sphere remained dark, dull and lifeless. It rejects me, she said, her voice hollowing out. The lineage is broken. The engine knows the colony failed. It knows I am a queen of ashes. Let me try, Noah said. He did not know why he said it, It was an instinct, a pull in his gut that felt like a fishhook reeling him in. He stepped past her. The cables twitching around the sphere seemed to lean toward him, like sunflowers turning toward the sun. Noah, be careful, Lyra warned. Noah reached out. He placed his hand on the cold crystal. The reaction was instantaneous. The sphere flared with blinding white light. A shockwave of energy blasted outward, knocking Lyra back a step. The cables writhed and hissed, glowing with sudden, violent vitality. The light did not just illuminate the room, it solidified. It formed shapes. Holographic ghosts materialized around them, hundreds of them. They were Noctur, but they looked different than Lyra. They were desperate, ragged, fleeing through the corridors of this very ship. A recorded voice boomed through the chamber, speaking with the authority of history. Log date, final descent, the voice said. It was a male voice, cold and pragmatic. The homeworld is lost. The Civil War has consumed the sun. We have secured the primitive world known as Earth. Noah watched as the hologram showed a map of Earth. It was an old map, the coastlines slightly different. We cannot conquer them by force, the voice continued. We are too few. We must conquer them by biology. We have initiated the seeding protocol. The hologram shifted. It showed Noctur scientists injecting a golden fluid into sleeping humans, early humans, wearing animal skins. We have spliced the Noctur resonance key into their bloodlines, the voice explained. It will remain dormant, a recessive traits passed down through breeding. But when we wake it, when we need it, we will have a population of living batteries. Noah pulled his hand back as if the sphere had burned him. Batteries, he whispered. The hologram continued, oblivious to his horror. The recording showed a projection of the future. It showed humans with glowing eyes, standing in rows, hooked up to machines that drained their life force to power massive Noctur cities. If the Empire falls, the voice said, the humans will be our failsafe. We have hidden the activation codes in the DNA of the carriers. One day, a carrier will return to us, and with their blood, we will reignite the engines of conquest. The hologram flickered and died, leaving them in the dim violet light. Silence stretched between them. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Noah stared at his hands. He felt sick. He felt like something dirty was crawling under his skin. I am a sleeper agent, he said, his voice cracking. My whole life, my parents, their parents. We were just waiting to be plugged in. Lyra stood frozen. She was staring at the space where the hologram had been. Her face was a mask of absolute devastation. I did not know, she whispered. Noah, I swear to the void, I did not know. She looked down at her own hands, the hands of a queen. My throne, she said, her voice trembling with self-disgust. My education, the stories of our noble exile, it was all a lie. We are not refugees. We are parasites. We planted you like crops. She looked at Noah, and for the first time, he saw genuine horror in her eyes. Not fear of her enemies, but fear of herself. I am a monster, she said. My blood is poison. I should have let the drones kill me in the alley. It would have been justice. She turned away from him, wrapping her cloak around herself as if she could hide from the shame. Noah looked at her. He saw the way her shoulders shook. He saw the centuries of propaganda crumbling around her, leaving her with nothing but guilt. He stepped toward her. He reached out and took her hand. She flinched, trying to pull away. Don't touch me, she hissed. I am the reason your family died in poverty. I am the reason you feel invisible. My people did this to you. Your people, Noah said firmly, tightening his grip. Not you. He spun her around, but she refused to meet his eyes. "Look at me. Lyra," he commanded. She looked up. Her eyes were swimming with silver tears. "That recording was 500 years ago," Noah said. "You were not even born. You are not that guy in the hologram. You are the girl who saved me from the hunter drones. You are the one who asked for my consent before you fed. It is in my blood," she choked out. "And now, it is in mine," Noah said. "We are both part of this messed up history. But we are here now, and we get to decide what to do with it." He squeezed her hand. "You are not a monster, Lyra. You are just a person who inherited a really bad legacy. Trust me. I know about bad inheritances. My dad left me nothing but debt and a bad back." A weak laugh escaped her lips, sounding like a sob. Before she could answer, a thunderous boom shook the ship. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The floor tilted violently beneath them. "They found us!" Lyra shouted, the sorrow vanishing instantly, replaced by combat instinct. The blast doors at the far end of the engineering bay exploded inward. Through the smoke, figures poured into the room. They were a mix of nightmares. First came the human corporate security, mercenaries in matte gray tactical gear, holding heavy assault rifles with underbarrel energy disruptors. Their visors glowed a harsh blue. Behind them, moving with predatory speed, were Valor's agents. They were Noctur warriors clad in jagged, bone-white armor, wielding whips made of solidified plasma. "There!" one of the mercenaries shouted, his voice amplified. "Secure the asset! Kill the female!" They opened fire. Noah threw himself behind a console as bullets sparked off the metal floor. Lyra stood her ground. She raised her hand, and a barrier of violet shadow erupted from the floor, absorbing the kinetic rounds. "Give me the carrier!" a Noctur warrior roared, leaping over the barrier with a plasma whip. Lyra intercepted him in midair. Her own blade materialized, clashing against the whip with a sound like a thunderclap. She kicked him in the chest, sending him flying back into the mercenaries. Noah peered over the console. The room was a kill box. There were too many of them. "Noah, we need to move," Lyra screamed, deflecting a hail of gunfire. She grabbed him by the collar and hauled him toward a service corridor. They ran, the sound of boots pounding behind them. The ship groaned. The structural integrity was failing. Gravity failure imminent. The ship's computer announced cheerfully. The floor dropped out from under them. Suddenly, up was sideways. They were falling toward the wall. Noah flailed, grabbing a bundle of cables. Lyra slammed into a bulkhead, gasping as the impact knocked the wind out of her. They were pinned in a narrow junction. Below them, which was technically the far wall, the mercenaries were regrouping, adjusting their magnetic boots to walk on the vertical surfaces. "We are trapped," Lyra gasped, clutching her side. Dark blood seeped between her fingers. She had been hit. Noah looked at the wound. "You are bleeding." "It is a grazer." She lied, but her skin was pale, dangerously so. The enemy was closing in. He could hear them climbing up the shaft. Lyra looked at Noah. Her eyes were wild, desperate. "We cannot fight them like this," she said. "I am too weak, and you are fragile." Noah finished. "Yeah, I know." "No," she said, intense. "You are a battery. You are a key." She grabbed his shoulders. Her grip was frantic. "Noah, listen to me. We can link deeper than before, not just a taste, a resonance bond." What does that mean?" Noah asked, looking at the approaching lights of the mercenaries. "It means I channel my power through you," Lyra said fast. "I use your bioenergy to amplify my abilities, but it goes both ways. You will feel everything I feel. My combat instincts, my speed, my hunger. Is it dangerous? It is intoxicating, Lyra warned. It blurs the line between us. If we go too deep, we might lose track of who is who. A plasma bolt scorched the wall inches from Noah's head. Let's do it, Noah yelled. Are you sure? Lyra asked, searching his face. It requires total trust. Noah looked at the vampire queen who had just apologized for her entire civilization. I trust you, he said. Do it. Lyra didn't hesitate. She pulled him against her. This time, she didn't bite him. She pressed her forehead against his. She placed her hands on his chest, right over his heart. Open, she commanded. Noah closed his eyes and pushed down the walls of his mind. He invited her in. The sensation was not like the first time. The first time had been a sip. This was a flood. It felt like being hooked up to a fusion reactor. A roar of cold fire swept through his veins. He felt Lyra's mind slam into his, not just her thoughts, but her very essence. He felt the centuries of loneliness, the cold weight of the void, the sharpness of her rage, and the terrifying, bottomless depth of her desire to survive. At the same time, he felt his own limits evaporate. The fear in his gut turned into fuel. His vision sharpened until he could see the dust motes floating in the air. He could hear the heartbeat of the mercenary climbing the wall 50 feet away. He opened his eyes when the world had slowed down. He looked at Lyra. She was glowing, literally radiating a corona of dark violet light. Her eyes were twin stars, and he knew she could feel him too. She felt his stubbornness. She felt the way he used humor as a shield. She felt the fierce, protective anger that had been sleeping inside him for 28 years. Ready? Her voice echoed in his skull, not spoken aloud. Let's take out the trash, Noah thought back. They moved as one. They didn't run. They flowed. Lyra grabbed his hand, and the energy arced between them, forming a physical loop of power. They leaped off the bulkhead. Gravity tried to pull them down, but they ignored it. Lyra projected a field of anti-mass, and they glided through the air like hawks. The mercenaries looked up, raising their rifles. Target acquired. One began. Noah extended his free hand. He didn't have a weapon, but he didn't need one. He could feel the ship's system singing in his blood. He reached out with his mind and seized the code of the blast doors. Close. The heavy steel doors slammed shut on the squad of mercenaries, crushing their rifles and sealing them in the lower shaft. A Noctur warrior lunged at them from the ceiling, his plasma whip cracking. Lyra didn't even look. She swung her arm, and Noah felt the motion as if it were his own. He ducked perfectly in sync with her, the whip snapping harmlessly over his head. Lyra unleashed a blast of telekinetic force. It hit the warrior like a freight train, pinning him against the wall. Noah saw the warrior's armor integrity lay out in his mind's eye, a weakness in the chest plate. Hit the center, Noah shouted. Thought. Lyra drove her will into the weakness Noah identified. The armor shattered. The warrior slumped. They landed on the upper gantry. More soldiers were pouring in from the airlock. Phasing, Lyra signaled. She pulled Noah tight against her side. The world went gray and insubstantial. They ran straight at the solid metal wall of the corridor. Noah flinched, expecting impact. Instead, they passed through the molecular structure of the steel like it was mist. The sensation was icy cold, a shiver that went down to the atomic level. They burst out onto the surface of the crater, the night air hitting their faces. The enemy dropship was hovering above the ruins, sweeping its searchlights. I can disable it, Noah thought, the power humming in his veins. He felt like a god. He felt like he could rewrite the stars. He reached out to the dropship. It was human tech, clumsy, full of holes. He jammed a spike of raw data into its navigation computer, reset to factory settings. The dropship lurched. Its engines cut out. It dropped like a stone, crashing into the far side of the debris field with a spectacular explosion of fire and metal. "We are clear." Lyra gasped. She released the bond. The separation was brutal. It felt like having a limb amputated. The cold fire vanished, leaving Noah feeling small, heavy, and incredibly human. He collapsed onto the gravel, retching dryly. Lyra stumbled back, leaning against a rusted pillar. She was panting, her chest heaving. The violet glow faded from her skin, leaving her looking paler than before. Noah wiped his mouth, staring at his shaking hands. That was... Noah wheezed. That was... terrifying. Lyra finished. She looked at him with an expression that was halfway between hunger and horror. "I want to do it again," Noah admitted. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. I felt powerful. I felt like I wasn't just a janitor. I felt like I mattered. Lyra pushed herself off the pillar. She walked over to him, looming in the darkness. "That is the danger," she said, her voice sharp. "That is the trap. Noah, the resonance, it is addictive, for both of us." She crouched down so they were eye level. "I felt your mind, Noah. I felt how much you hated your life. And you felt me. You felt the predator. I felt the power." Noah argued. "We were unstoppable. We could take Vylor. We could take the whole empire. And then what?" Lyra snapped. "We become them? We become the monsters who use people as batteries?" She grabbed his shoulders, shaking him slightly. "I wanted to consume you just now," she whispered fiercely. "In that bond. You tasted like sunlight. I wanted to drink you dry until there was nothing left but a husk. It took every ounce of my will to let you go." Noah went still. He looked at the fear in her eyes. It wasn't fear of Vylor. It was fear of hurting him. "You stopped," Noah said quietly. "Barely." Lyra confessed. She let go of him and sat back on her heels, wrapping her arms around herself. They sat in the silence of the ruins, the only sound the distant crackle of the burning dropship. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a cold, hollow ache in its wake. "We need boundaries," Lyra said finally. "If we are going to survive this, if we are going to work together, we cannot do that again unless there is no other choice." Noah nodded slowly. He felt the withdrawal itching under his skin, but he knew she was right. "Agreed," he said. "No more soul merging unless we are about to die." He looked at her. She looked small in the darkness, stripped of her royal armor, just a girl sitting in the dirt of a dead world. "Lyra," he said. She looked up. "Back in the ship," Noah said, "when you said you were a monster. And just now, when you said you wanted to eat me, I am warning you." "Noah, shut up for a second." "Your Highness," Noah interrupted gently. "I just wanted to say, the bond went both ways. I didn't just feel the hunger. I felt relief." "Relief?" she asked, confused. "Yeah," Noah said. He picked up a small stone and tossed it into the darkness. "When you looked at me, when you smelled me or whatever, you didn't see a janitor. You didn't see a credit score. You saw home." He looked at her. "You have no idea what it is like," Noah said, his voice thick with emotion. "To walk through a room and have everyone look right through you. To be a ghost in your own life. But you see me. And that makes me feel real." Lyra's expression softened. The sharp angles of her face seemed to blur. "And you," she whispered, "you make me feel human. When I am with you, I do not feel like the last sovereign. I do not feel like a relic of a dead war. I just feel Like Lyra. She reached out and brushed a smudge of dirt from his cheek. I am afraid. Noah, she admitted. Not of Valor. I am afraid that if I let myself need you, if I let myself want this, I will destroy you. And I am afraid, Noah replied, leaning slightly into her touch, that once this is all over, once you get your throne back, you will leave, and I will have to go back to taking out the trash, knowing what it felt like to touch the stars. Lyra shook her head slowly. I do not think I can ever go back to how it was before, she said. The trash has been taken out. Noah, the bag is broken. Noah cracked a smile. That is a terrible metaphor. It is yours, she reminded him, a faint smile touching her own lips. She stood up and offered him her hand, not as a queen to a subject, and not as a predator to prey, just a hand. Come, she said. We have a conspiracy to expose, and I believe we have a treaty to crash. Noah took her hand. He squeezed it, and she squeezed back, gentle, controlled, human. Led the way, partner, Noah said. They walked away from the ruins of the past, hand in hand, stepping out of the shadows of the old world and into the dangerous, uncertain light of the future. The bond was quiet now, sleeping in their blood, a promise and a threat waiting for the next time they dared to open the door. The shuttle ride to the Obsidian Crown was a study in claustrophobic luxury. The flagship of the Noctur fleet hung in high orbit like a dagger suspended in the void. A massive structure of black crystal and weeping violet lights that made the human space stations look like children's toys glued together with hope and duct tape. Noah adjusted the collar of his envoy suit for the 50th time. It was a midnight blue affair, woven from a fabric that felt like liquid silk and cost more than his entire apartment building. Lyra had fabricated it for him in the skiff's matter printer, insisting that if he was going to walk into the lion's den, he needed to look like he owned the zoo. Stop fidgeting, Lyra said, her voice cool and composed. You are wearing a diplomatic formal, Noah, not a straitjacket. It feels like one, Noah muttered, tugging at a cuff. And I feel like a fraud. Envoy? Really? I am a janitor. My diplomatic experience is limited to negotiating with the recycling plant when they miss a pickup. You are the envoy of the Terran resonance, Lyra corrected, smoothing the front of her own gown. It was a terrifying masterpiece of red velvet and black armor mesh, designed to look like she was bleeding elegance. It is not a lie. Noah, you represent the bridge between our species, even if that bridge is currently built on secrets and panic. The shuttle docked with a heavy magnetic thud. The airlock cycled, hissing with the scent of sterile air and ancient power. Remember, Lyra whispered, leaning close enough that her breath ghosted over his ear. You are vital. You are dangerous. Do not look down. Do not apologize. And for the love of the void, do not tell anyone you clean floors. The doors slid open. They stepped out into a grand atrium that made the undercourt look like a basement. The ceiling was a transparent dome revealing the star-strewn darkness of space. Beneath it, hundreds of Noctur nobles moved in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, their voices a low murmur like the ocean. Interspersed among the pale, tall aliens were humans, men and women in sharp business suits, holding crystal flutes of blue wine, looking entirely too comfortable standing next to apex predators. The summit had begun. Lyra took Noah's arm. Her grip was iron hard, a silent reminder of the danger they were walking into. As they descended the grand staircase, heads turned, red eyes narrowed, whispers rippled through the crowd. The sovereign returns, someone hissed. And she brings a pet, another voice murmured. Noah kept his head up, fixing his face into what he hoped was an expression of bored superiority. Inside, his stomach was doing backflips. They were intercepted near the bottom of the stairs by Valerius and a cluster of severe-looking advisors. Valerius looked at Noah with barely concealed contempt before turning to Lyra. "My queen," Valerius said, bowing stiffly. "You are late. The High Council is restless. Lord Valor has been persuasive in your absence." "Where is he?" Lyra asked, her voice cutting through the ambient noise like a razor. "He is holding court in the banquet hall," Valerius said. "With the human delegation, they are discussing the Treaty of Ascendance." Lyra's jaw tightened. "The Treaty of Submission, you mean?" She steered Noah toward the banquet hall. As they walked, she spoke without moving her lips, her voice projecting directly into his ear. "They want me to marry him." "Noah!" Noah stumbled slightly, catching himself before he could look clumsy. "Excuse me?" "It is the political solution," Lyra explained, her tone devoid of emotion. "Valor controls the military factions. I hold the blood right. A union would prevent civil war. It would stabilize the feeding supply." "And the human sacrifice zones?" Noah asked, feeling a cold knot form in his chest. "That is part of the dowry?" Lyra did not answer immediately. Her silence was answer enough. They entered the banquet hall. It was a cavernous space bathed in artificial crimson light, designed to mimic the dying sun of the Noctur homeworld. Long tables groaned under the weight of exotic foods and decanters of thick, dark liquid that Noah desperately hoped was wine. In the center of the room, holding court near a fountain that flowed with liquid light, was a man who radiated power. He was human, in his 50s, with silver hair coiffed to perfection and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was speaking with a tall, broad-shouldered Noctur male who wore armor made of white bone. "That is Valor," Lyra whispered, indicating the Noctur. "And the human is Director Sterling, head of Earth Global Defense, the man who sells out his own planet," Noah thought. Sterling spotted them and waved, excusing himself from Valor. He walked over, extending a manicured hand. "Your Highness," Sterling said, his voice smooth as oiled glass. "And this must be the mysterious envoy I have heard so much about." Noah shook the hand. It was dry and cold. "Noah," he said simply. "A pleasure," Sterling said. "I must say, Noah, your presence complicates things. We were just finalizing the zoning permits for the new collaborative districts." "Zoning permits," Noah repeated. "Is that what we are calling them?" Sterling chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "We have to be pragmatic. Envoy, the city is overpopulated. The lower districts are a drain on resources, crime, poverty, decay. Valor offers us technology that could solve the energy crisis, cure cancer, and open the stars. In exchange, he asks for the population of Sector 7. Sector 7, Noah said. "That is the slums. That is where the refugees live." "Exactly," Sterling said, taking a sip of his blue wine. "People who contribute nothing to the GDP. People who are, statistically speaking, already ghosts. We are simply trading dead weight for a golden age. It is just business." "Noah, surely a man of your standing understands the necessity of trimming the fat." Noah looked at Sterling's pleasant, grandfatherly face. He realized then that evil didn't always look like a vampire with red eyes. Sometimes it looked like a man in a tailored suit talking about efficiency. "I understand," Noah said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "That you are a monster in a nice tie." Sterling's smile didn't waver. "Idealism is a luxury of the young. Noah, you will learn." Lyra stepped between them. her presence like a physical wall. "Director," she said icily, "enjoy the wine. It may be the last thing you swallow without choking." She pulled Noah away before he could punch the director of global defense in the nose. The music changed. The ambient drone shifted into a slow, rhythmic pulse that seemed to beat in time with Noah's heart. "Dance with me," Lyra commanded. "What?" Noah blinked. "Now. If we stand still, we are targets," Lyra said. "If we move, we are participants. Dance with me, envoy." She pulled him onto the floor. Noah, who had learned to dance by watching old movies in his apartment, placed a hand on her waist. It was rigid, tense. "Relax," Lyra murmured, placing her hand on his shoulder. "You look like you are bracing for impact." "I am," Noah muttered. "That Sterling guy, he talked about people like they were cattle. To him, they are," Lyra said. They began to move, a slow waltz amidst the swirling crimson light. "That is the truth of power, Noah. It turns subjects into numbers. It turns lives into currency. It is why I ran away. It is why I hid in the clouds." Noah looked at her, up close. The regal mask slipped. He saw the fear in her eyes, the desperate need for someone to tell her she didn't have to do this alone. "You do not have to marry him," Noah said. Lyra spun him, her dress flaring out like a pool of blood. "If I do not, Valor attacks Earth. Millions die. If I do, thousands die. But the species survives. It is the trolley problem. Noah, written in blood." "There is a third option," Noah said, pulling her closer than protocol allowed. "Oh?" Lyra raised an eyebrow, but she didn't pull away. Her fingers tightened on his shoulder. "We burn the tracks," Noah said. "We expose them. We show the council what Valor really is. We show the humans what Sterling is doing." "Idealism," Lyra whispered, but there was a hunger in her voice. Noah felt the bond flare between them. It wasn't the overwhelming flood of the battle in the ruins, but a steady, warm hum. He felt her desire, sharp, terrifying, and deeply buried. She wanted to be saved. She wanted to burn the world down. She wanted him, and he wanted her. Not the queen. Her. "You smell like home," Noah whispered, repeating her words back to her. Lyra's breath hitched, her eyes dilated, the red deepening to black. "And you," she murmured, leaning in until her forehead rested against his. "Smell like trouble." The music swelled. For a second, the room vanished. The political maneuvering, the impending war, the genocide, it all faded. There was just the heat of her hand, the smell of ozone and flowers, and the terrifying realization that he was falling in love with a woman who could snap his spine with 2 fingers. The moment shattered. A slow, mocking applause cut through the music. "Beautiful," a deep voice boomed, truly touching. The music died. The dancers parted. Lord Valor stood at the edge of the floor, flanked by 4 armed guards and a smirking Director Sterling. Valor was magnificent in the worst way possible. He was taller than Lyra, with a mane of white hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by a sculptor who hated softness. "My queen," Valor said, stepping forward. "You debase yourself, dancing with the livestock." Noah stiffened, but Lyra's hand on his arm clamped down, a warning to stay still. "He is an envoy." "Valor," Lyra said, her voice steady. "Show respect." "He is a saboteur," Valor countered smoothly. He raised a hand, and a massive holographic display erupted in the center of the room. It showed grainy footage of the crash site in the ruins. It showed Noah touching the heart engine. But the footage had been doctored. Instead of the engine reacting to him, It showed Noah inserting a data spike. It showed him uploading a virus. "We found the logs," Valor announced to the gasping room. "This human is not a carrier. He is a hacker. He infiltrated the Ethelgard wreckage. He used a crude human virus to corrupt the memory core, planting false records to sow discord among the houses." "That is a lie," Noah shouted, stepping forward. Valor ignored him. He turned to the crowd of nobles. He corrupted the queen's mind with a Neuralink hack, simulating a bond. He is a spy for the anti-alien terrorist cells on Earth. He is here to assassinate the council. A murmur of outrage swept through the room. Red eyes glared at Noah with renewed hatred. "Lyra," Valor said, his voice softening into a poisonous croon. "You are a victim. This creature manipulated you. Step away from him. Let us dispose of the vermin." Noah looked at Lyra. She was frozen. Her mind was racing. Noah could feel it through the bond. It was a chaotic storm of calculation. She knew it was a frame-up. She knew Valor had won the crowd. If she fought now, the guards would open fire. Noah would die. She would die. The conspiracy would win. She had to choose. She looked at Noah. Her eyes were hard, glassy shields. "Lyra," Noah whispered. She shoved him. It wasn't a gentle push. She slammed her hands into his chest, sending him stumbling back toward the guards. "Take him," Lyra said. Her voice was dead. Noah stared at her. The wind knocked out of him. "Lyra." "I said take him," Lyra screamed, turning her back on him. "Get this filth out of my sight." Two guards seized Noah's arms. Energy shackles clamped around his wrists, burning his skin. "Lyra!" Noah yelled as they dragged him backward. "Don't do this! We are partners!" Lyra did not turn around. She walked toward Valor, her head held high, while Noah was dragged kicking and screaming from the hall. The cell was a pristine white cube. No windows, no furniture, just white light that came from everywhere and nowhere, eliminating all shadows. It was designed to disorient, to break the mind by removing all sensory context. Noah sat in the corner, his knees pulled up to his chest. The energy shackles were gone, but his wrists still tingled. He wasn't sure how long he had been there. Hours? Days? The silence was absolute. "Well, this is cozy," a voice croaked. "If you like the inside of a refrigerator." Noah jumped. He hadn't realized he wasn't alone. In the opposite corner, blending perfectly with the white wall thanks to a pale, grayish skin tone, sat a spindly alien. He looked like a praying mantis made of wet clay, wearing a torn mechanic's jumpsuit. "Who are you?" Noah asked. "Crix," the alien said, clicking his mandibles. "Chief engineer of the water filtration sector. Or I was, until I pointed out that Lord Valor's new energy conduit would likely explode and poison the water supply. Apparently, math is treason now." "I am Noah," Noah said. "I am the janitor." Crix tilted his triangular head. "A janitor? In the royal detention block? You must have swept something very important under the rug." "I swept up a conspiracy," Noah said bitterly. "And then I got swept up myself." He rested his head against the wall. He kept replaying the moment in the ballroom. The shove, the look in Lyra's eyes. "She betrayed me," Noah whispered. Crix clicked his tongue, a sound like dry twigs snapping. "Did she? Or did she calculate that you are harder to kill when you are in a cell than when you are standing in front of a firing squad?" Noah looked at the engineer. "What do you mean?" "Queens do not have the luxury of feelings," Crix said. "They have strategy. If she had defended you, you would be a pile of ash on the ballroom floor right now. By denouncing you, she bought you time." Noah frowned. He thought about the bond. He had felt her fear, her calculation. but he had also felt the wall come down, shutting him out. She called me filth, Noah said. Crick shrugged. Sticks and stones, human. Sticks and stones. At least she didn't call you an expendable resource. That is what Valor calls me. Acceptable loss. Noah closed his eyes. Expendable. That was the word Sterling had used. Trash. We are all just trash to them, aren't we? Noah said softly. Just numbers on a spreadsheet. Only if you let them do the math, Crix replied. Personally, I prefer to be in variable they cannot solve, high above in the sovereign's private chambers. Lyra stood before a mirror that she had shattered with her own fist. Her hand was bleeding, the dark blood dripping onto the exquisite carpet. Behind her, Lord Valor sat in her chair, drinking her wine. You performed well, Valor said. The council is pleased. The wedding is set for the day of the treaty signing. It will be a symbolic union, the submission of the earth, and the submission of the crown. Lyra stared at her fractured reflection. She saw a monster. She saw a traitor. And the human? Lyra asked, her voice devoid of inflection. He will be executed after the ceremony, Valor said casually. A public example, to discourage other spies. Lyra turned. Her face was a mask of cold obedience. Let me kill him, she said. Valor paused, the glass halfway to his lips. He looked at her with interest. You wish to dirty your hands? He humiliated me. Lyra lied smoothly. He violated my mind. I want to be the one to drain him. I want to take back the resonance he stole. Valor smiled. It was a gruesome sight. Fitting, he said. Very well. He is yours to finish, but only after the wedding. I want you focused on our union. My love. He stood up, walked over to her, and kissed her forehead. It took every ounce of Lyra's discipline not to rip his throat out with her teeth. Rest now, Valor said. You have a busy day tomorrow. He left, the doors sealed. Lyra collapsed. She fell to her knees, dry heaving. She clawed at the carpet, gasping for air. The shame was a physical weight, crushing her lungs. She had thrown Noah to the wolves. She had looked into the eyes of the only person who had ever truly seen her, and she had betrayed him. She closed her eyes. She reached out into the void. She pushed past the walls of the ship, past the interference fields, searching for the faint, warm hum that she had felt in the ruins. Noah, in the white cell. Noah's head snapped up. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. It was the smell of ozone and flowers, suddenly overpowering the sterile scent of the prison. Noah. He scrambled to his feet. Lyra? He couldn't speak back. He didn't know how to project, but he focused on the feeling. He focused on his anger, his hurt, and his confusion. I know. Lyra's voice whispered in his mind. It sounded weak, strained. I know you hate me. You should. But listen to me, please. Noah squeezed his eyes shut. You sold me out. He thought it as loud as he could. I saved you, she answered. Her mental voice cracked with emotion. Valor had snipers in the gallery. If I had moved to protect you, you would be dead. I had to make them believe I didn't care. Noah leaned against the wall. The anger drained away, leaving a bruised, aching hope. You hurt me. You really hurt me. I hurt myself more, Lyra whispered. Every word was a blade. Noah. But I have a plan. I have bought us time. Time for what? To watch you marry Skeletor? To burn the tracks, she said, echoing his words from the dance floor. To expose it all. But I cannot do it alone. I am trapped in the tower. Noah. I need my partner. I am in a box. Lyra. I am a little bit trapped too. Not for long, Lyra promised. The engineer in the cell with you, Crix. He built the ventilation systems. He knows the blind spots. Noah looked at Crix, who was currently scratching a diagram onto the floor with a piece of plastic. Okay, Noah thought. Suppose I break out. Then what? The treaty signing, Lyra said. It is being broadcast live to the entire fleet and the Earth Directorate. Valor thinks it is his coronation. We are going to turn it into his trial. A heist, Noah thought, a slow smile spreading across his face. You want to pull a heist at a royal wedding? I want to take out the trash, Lyra replied. Do you trust me? Noah? One more time? Noah felt the bond humming. He felt her terrifying resolve. He felt the love she was too afraid to name, burning like a star in the darkness of her mind. Always, Noah thought. Then get ready, Lyra said. The ceremony begins in 6 hours. Do not be late. The connection faded, leaving Noah standing in the white silence. He looked down at Crix. Hey, Bugs, Noah said. Crix looked up. Do not call me Bugs. Noah grinned. It was a sharp, dangerous grin. He felt like the envoy of the Terran resonance. How would you like to get out of here and ruin a wedding? Crix's mandibles clicked rapidly. He stood up, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. I hate weddings, Crix said, and I have some very interesting ideas about how to rewire a door lock using a spoon and a piece of elastic. Noah looked at the white door. He didn't see a wall anymore. He saw a variable waiting to be solved. Let's get to work, Noah said. The white cell hummed with a silence that was designed to break the mind, but Crix was making a noise that was actively breaking the silence. It was a wet, rhythmic clicking sound as the insectoid engineer worked a piece of stolen conductive plastic into the seams of the door panel. Physics is just a suggestion when you have bad wiring, Crix muttered, his mandibles twitching. And let me tell you, the wiring on this prison block was done by the lowest bidder. Noah stood by the wall, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He closed his eyes, reaching out with that strange new sense that lived in his blood, the resonance. He could feel the ship around him. It wasn't just metal and ceramic. It was a nervous system of data and energy. And right now, it was agitated. Can you open it? Noah whispered. Crix paused. I can convince the door that it is actually a window. After that, it is up to you to fit through the frame. There was a sharp spark, a smell of burning ozone, and the white wall hissed. The seamless panel shuddered and slid open, revealing a dark, narrow service corridor filled with cables the size of pythons. After you, the janitor, Crix said with a bow that looked more like a spasm. Noah scrambled into the tunnel. The air here was hot and smelled of recycled engine grease. Where is the data core? Noah asked, looking at the maze of pipes. Central spine, Crix said, scrambling up the wall with his clawed limbs. 40 decks up. We have to move through the gravity rotation couplings. It is going to get nauseating. They ran. It was a nightmare of verticality. The service tunnels bypassed the artificial gravity generators, meaning the direction of down shifted every 100 feet. One moment Noah was running on a grating. The next, he was falling sideways toward a spinning fan, only to catch himself on a bundle of fiber optics as gravity reoriented. Drones buzzed past the vents, their scanners sweeping the main hallways. But they ignored the rat runs in the walls. Noah pushed himself harder. He could feel Lyra. She was a burning star of anxiety in the back of his mind, a beacon of terror and resolve. She was walking into the lion's den, and she was doing it alone. Hold on, Noah thought, projecting the words with all the force of his will. I am coming. They reached a heavy blast door marked with a skull symbol and the Noctur glyph for forbidden knowledge. This is it, Crix said, tapping the panel. But it is biolocked. Royal DNA only. Noah stepped forward. He didn't look at the keypad. He looked at the camera lens above the door. He didn't see a camera. He saw an eye connected to a brain. He placed his hand on the metal. Open, he commanded. He didn't speak the word. He pushed his resonance into the lock. He showed the machine the signature of the heart engine he carried in his blood. He showed it the memory of the ancient ship in the ruins. The machine hesitated. It tasted his genetic code, confused by the mixture of human biological noise and pure royal Noctur authority. Access granted. Sovereign. Error. Access granted. The machine chirped uncertainly. The doors groaned open. Inside, the data core was a forest of crystal pillars, pulsing with blue light. It was the memory of the Empire. Crix whistled. That is a lot of storage. Noah ran to the central console. He didn't type. He grabbed the interface cables, living semi-organic vines of data, and wrapped them around his wrists. The connection was instantaneous and brutal. Noah gasped as the schematic of the entire Obsidian Crown downloaded into his brain. He saw the weapon systems, the life support, the hidden cameras, and the broadcasting arrays. He found the feed for the treaty ceremony. It is starting, Noah gritted out, his eyes rolling back in his head as he fought the torrent of data. Crix, keep the security subroutines off my back. I am going to crash this party. The celestial atrium was a masterpiece of intimidation. It was a spherical chamber located at the very apex of the ship. The walls were not glass, they were force fields, perfectly transparent, holding back the vacuum of space. The floor, ceiling, and walls revealed the dizzying, majestic view of Earth spinning below. A swirl of blue oceans and white clouds that looked fragile enough to crush in a fist. In the center of the room, floating in zero gravity, was a circular platform. Around it, hundreds of dignitaries floated, tethered by magnetic boots to independent gravity plates. The Noctur nobles drifted like underwater predators in their flowing robes. The human delegation, led by Director Sterling, stood in a cluster, their faces obscured by shimmering hollow masks that hid their identities, cowards hiding behind technology while they sold their own species. Lyra floated in the center of the platform. She wore a ceremonial gown of white armored silk, a color of mourning and surrender. Beside her stood Lord Valor, looking triumphant in black and gold, citizens of the High Court and envoys of Earth. Valor's voice boomed, amplified by the room's acoustics. We stand at the precipice of a new era. Today, two worlds become one. Lyra stared straight ahead. She looked at the earth below her feet. She could feel the vibration of the ship, a hum that felt wrong, discordant. Noah? She sent the thought out, a fragile prayer. Showtime. His voice answered, clear and cocky in her mind. Valor turned to Lyra, extending a hand. Do you, Lyra of the First House, accept the terms of the Sanguine Pact? Do you pledge your blood and your crown to the preservation of our race? Lyra looked at his hand. It was the hand of a butcher manicured to look like a savior. She looked up at the gathered crowd. She saw the hungry eyes of the nobles. She saw the cold calculation of the humans behind their masks. I pledge, Lyra said, her voice soft. Valor smiled, a shark smelling blood. I pledge, Lyra continued, her voice rising, vibrating with sudden power, to burn this lie to the ground. Valor's smile faltered. What? Lyra threw her arms wide. Her cloak billowed in the artificial solar wind, snapping like a war banner. Now. Noah. The lights in the celestial atrium died. For a second, There was only the blue glow of the earth. Then, the massive holographic projectors that lined the dome, meant to display the wedding crests, erupted with static. The static cleared. A giant image filled the room, 30 feet high. It was a recording. It was Valor, sitting in his private office, drinking wine with Director Sterling. "The casualty rates in Sector 7 are acceptable," the recorded Valor said, his voice echoing thunderously in the silent chamber. 50,000 humans a year. A sustainable harvest. As long as the technology transfer happens on schedule, the recorded Sterling replied, "We can classify them as victims of a contagion. The public believes what we tell them to believe." The room erupted. The human delegates began shouting, ripping off their holomasks in panic. The Noctur nobles hissed, looking from the screen to Valor with dawning horror. The image shifted. It showed a map of the city below. Red zones lit up. Entire neighborhoods marked feeding grounds, schools, hospitals, refugee centers. "Lies!" Valor roared, his face twisting into a mask of rage. "This is a fabrication, is it?" Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. She pointed to the screen. The footage changed again. It showed the ancient log from the crash site. The Noctur scientists injecting early humans. The voice explaining the living battery protocol. "We are not gods," Lyra shouted, addressing her people. "We are farmers who forgot we were planting seeds. We built our empire on the theft of another species' future." She turned to Valor. "You call me a traitor? You are the parasite. Valor, you would turn us into monsters just to keep your crown. Kill her!" Valor screamed. He pointed at Lyra. "Kill the witch!" The room descended into madness. Valor hit a control on his wrist. The gravity in the chamber went haywire. The independent gravity plates tore loose from their moorings. Delegates were thrown across the room. Some fell up, slamming into the force fields. Others began to orbit the center platform in a chaotic swirl of limbs and robes. Valor's personal guard, equipped with mag stabilizers, drew their weapons, curved blades of humming violet energy. They launched themselves at Lyra. Lyra didn't flinch. She grabbed the air, and a whip of solid shadow materialized in her hand. She cracked it, the sound like a thunderclap, sending the first guard spinning away into the zero-G void. But there were too many of them. Suddenly, the broadcasting array speakers screeched with feedback. "Gravity override engaged," a familiar voice announced over the intercom. The gravity around Lyra stabilized, creating a bubble of normal physics. The guards, caught off guard by the shift, stumbled and floated helplessly. A vent near the ceiling exploded outward. Noah dropped into the room. He didn't fall clumsily. He was wearing a stolen gravity harness, and he moved with the precise, controlled grace of someone who was seeing the math of the room in real time. He landed beside Lyra, a makeshift shock baton in his hand that crackled with blue electricity. "Sorry I am late," Noah grinned, though he was sweating and pale. The traffic in the ventilation shafts was murder. Lyra looked at him, and for a second, the battle didn't exist. There was only him. "You are insane," she breathed. "I learned from the best," Noah replied. Valor, anchoring himself to the central dais with magnetic boots, drew a massive greatsword of red plasma. "So, the rat comes out of the walls," Valor sneered. He swung the sword. A wave of red energy slashed through the air. "Move!" Lyra shouted. She didn't push Noah this time. She grabbed his hand. The bond snapped into place. It was instantaneous and seamless. They didn't need to speak. Lyra felt Noah's calculation. He saw the trajectory of the energy wave before it hit. Noah felt Lyra's power. He felt the shadow matter she could summon. They moved as one entity. They ducked under the wave, sliding across the platform. Noah reached out with his mind. Sensing the tech in Valor's boots, maglock disengage. Valor's left boot unlocked. He stumbled. Lyra capitalized instantly. She blasted him with a pulse of telekinetic force. Valor flew backward, but he caught himself on a floating piece of debris. Snarling, he raised his hand. The room's defensive turrets dropped from the ceiling, tracking them. "Target the human!" Valor roared. The turrets whined, charging up. Noah looked at Lyra. "I can't hack them all fast enough." "Shield!" Lyra commanded. She threw up a dome of violet energy. Neon blasts hammered against it, cracking the barrier. Noah could feel her strain through the bond. It felt like a heavy weight pressing on his own chest. She was burning through her reserves too fast. "We are pinned," Noah shouted. Valor laughed. He pushed off the debris, launching himself toward them. He didn't attack Lyra. He aimed for the weak point. He aimed for the shield generator. He threw a gravity grenade at the base of their platform. The explosion shattered Lyra's concentration. The shield flickered and died. The platform cracked in half. Noah and Lyra were thrown apart. Noah slammed into a floating piece of masonry, the impact knocking the wind out of him. He drifted, dazed, his shock baton spinning away into the void. Lyra recovered faster, righting herself in midair, but Valor was already on her. He slammed into her, pinning her against a floating pillar. He held his plasma sword to her throat. "Look," Valor hissed, forcing her head around. "Look at your pet." The turrets had locked onto Noah. Red laser sights dotted his chest. "No!" Lyra screamed, struggling against Valor's grip. Valor smiled. "His death will be the period at the end of your sentence, my dear. And once he is gone, that troublesome resonance in his blood dies with him. You will be mine again." Noah floated there, staring down the barrels of the gun. He couldn't move. His harness was damaged. He looked at Lyra. He felt her terror. It was a cold, screaming thing in his mind. She was going to surrender. She was going to beg Valor to stop, to trade her life for his. Noah realized with a sudden crystal clarity that this was the lever Valor would use forever. As long as Noah lived, he was Lyra's weakness. But he was also the key, the heart engine, Noah thought, the chain. If he died, the link broke. But if he surrendered to the resonance, if he stopped fighting the alien part of himself and let it consume the human part, he could become the surge. He looked Lyra in the eyes across the chaotic chamber. "Do not surrender," Noah projected. "Do not you dare give up." "Noah, no!" Lyra screamed in his head. Noah closed his eyes. He didn't brace for death. He reached inside, grabbed the golden thread of the Noctur resonance in his DNA, and he pulled. He didn't sip from the power. He swallowed it whole. "Take it," Noah whispered. He pushed every ounce of his life force, every drop of his bioenergy, through the bond to Lyra. It was a sacrifice. He was emptying himself to fill her. Lyra felt the surge hit her like a supernova. It wasn't just power. It was him. It was his memories of taking out the trash and looking at the stars. It was his stubborn refusal to be small. It was his love for her, a love that was brave enough to let go. The grief hit her first, followed instantly by a rage so pure it turned the world white. "No!" Lyra roared. Her eyes didn't just glow, they ignited. She didn't push Valor away. She exploded. A shockwave of raw, violet-white energy detonated from her body. It shattered the floating pillar. It knocked Valor across the room like a rag doll. It slammed into the turrets, vaporizing them instantly. The energy didn't dissipate. It swirled around Lyra, forming wings of blinding light. She reached out, her hand clawing the empty air. She grabbed Noah with her mind. She pulled him toward her, not gently, but with fierce, possessive desperation. She wrapped him in the energy, shielding him, holding him against her chest as she floated in the center of the storm she had created. You do not get to die, she sobbed, her voice amplified by the raw power. I forbid it. She funneled the energy back into him, forcing his heart to keep beating, forcing the life back into his veins. It was a loop of infinite resonance. She fueled him. He fueled her. Valor, battered and bleeding, floated near the ceiling. He looked at Lyra with true fear for the first time. What are you? Valor gasped. Lyra turned her gaze on him. She wasn't just a queen anymore. She was a binary star system. I am the end of your world, Valor, she said. She raised her hand. The entire room shook. The floating debris stopped moving. The gravity stabilized instantly, slamming everyone to the floor except Lyra and Valor. She lowered Noah gently to the platform. He was unconscious, but alive. Lyra turned to Valor. She floated toward him. He swung his sword, screaming in panic. Lyra caught the blade with her bare hand. The energy sizzled against her skin, but it didn't burn. She crushed the plasma blade, extinguishing it. You ruled by hunger, Lyra said, her voice echoing with the voices of 1,000 ancestors. You treated lives like food. She placed her hand on Valor's chest. Valor shrieked. It wasn't a sound of pain, but of emptiness. Lyra pulled. She didn't take his life. She took his resonance. She ripped the connection to the Noctur core out of his soul. She stripped him of the ability to feed, to command, to dominate. She withdrew her hand, holding a ball of dark, oily smoke. She crushed it in her fist. Valor fell. He hit the floor, gasping, looking at his hands. His eyes, once glowing red, were now a dull, muddy brown. He looked old. He looked pathetic. What have you done? Valor wheezed. I am empty. You are ordinary, Lyra said, landing softly on the platform. You will live, Valor. But you will never feed on another living thing again. You will live on synthetic supplements. You will live as a subject, not a master. You will know what it is like to be small. Silence descended on the celestial atrium. The viewing windows were cracked, spider-webbed patterns obscuring the earth below. The human delegates were cowering. The Noctur nobles were on their knees, bowing not out of protocol, but out of awe. Noah groaned, shifting on the floor. Lyra was there instantly. The terrifying goddess vanished, replaced by a terrified girl. She dropped to her knees, lifting his head into her lap. Noah, she whispered, brushing the hair from his forehead. Noah blinked. His eyes focused slowly. He saw Lyra's face, streaked with tears and dust. Did we win? Noah croaked. Lyra laughed, a wet, choked sound. Yes, you idiot. We won. Noah looked over at Valor, who was being dragged away by his own former guards. Good, Noah murmured, because I am definitely asking for a raise after this. Lyra leaned down and kissed his forehead, holding him like he was the most precious thing in the universe. The doors to the atrium opened. The moderate nobles, those who had been silenced by Valor's terror, tentatively stepped forward. The human delegation, realizing the winds had shifted, began to stand up, adjusting their suits. Director Sterling tried to slip away toward the exit. Lyra didn't look up, but she pointed a finger. Stop him, she commanded. The guards blocked Sterling's path. Lyra stood up, pulling Noah with her. He leaned on her, his legs shaky, but he stood. She looked at the gathered crowd. The Sanguine Pact is dead, Lyra announced, her voice ringing clear. There will be no sacrifice zones. There will be no secret farms. She looked at the humans. You want our technology? You want the stars? Then you will earn them. We will build a new treaty, one based on exchange, not exploitation. We will heal your sick, and you will help us repair our engines. But everything happens in the light. No more masks. She looked at her own people. And we will stop hiding. We will stop eating the dark to survive. We are not exiles anymore. We are neighbors. An older Noctur noble stepped forward. He bowed low. As you command, sovereign. Lyra looked at Noah. He squeezed her hand. Ambassador Noah, Lyra said, a small smile playing on her lips. Are you ready to draft a treaty? Noah looked at the room full of aliens and politicians. He looked at the cracked window revealing the blue world he used to think didn't want him. He took a deep breath. I did bring a pen, Noah said. Lyra squeezed his hand tighter. Then let's write a better story, she said. Together, they walked to the center of the room, standing amidst the wreckage of the old world, ready to build the new one. The silence that followed the revolution was not empty. It was heavy with the sounds of repair. On the orbital station Obsidian Crown, the war was over, but the work had just begun. The great celestial viewing deck, once a pristine sphere of silence, now hummed with the noise of welding torches and the shouting of foremen. The glass that Lord Valor had cracked during his duel with Lyra was being fused back together by teams of drone spiders, their laser webbing stitching the transparency like sutures on a wound. Noah sat on a crate of supplies in what used to be a secondary hangar bay, now converted into a triage and refugee center. The air smelled of burnt circuitry, antiseptic foam, and the strange, spicy scent of Noctur ration bars. He watched the scene before him with a sense of surreal detachment. A week ago, he had been unclogging a trash chute on the 42nd floor of a tenement block. Now, he was watching a human structural engineer from Detroit explain the concept of leverage to a Noctur warrior who was strong enough to lift a tank but confused by a wrench. It is lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, the engineer was saying, making exaggerated hand motions. The Noctur tilted his head, his red eyes blinking slowly. Why would the direction of rotation alter the structural integrity? Because physics said so. The engineer sighed, handing him the wrench. Just turn it that way until it stops screaming. Noah chuckled, taking a bite of the protein bar Lyra had given him. It tasted like ash and blueberries, which was an improvement over the vending machine food back on Earth. Beside him, Crix the insectoid engineer was happily dismantling a terrifying-looking plasma rifle and reassembling it into a toaster. You seem remarkably calm for a man who just helped overthrow an empire, Crix observed, clicking his mandibles. I am numb, Noah corrected. My brain has officially filed a grievance with my nervous system. I think I am running on fumes and adrenaline. He looked across the hangar. In the corner, a group of human refugees, people who had been marked for the sacrifice zones, were sitting in a circle with a Noctur family. The humans looked terrified but curious. The Noctur looked equally wary, but then a human child offered a Noctur child a bag of gummy worms. The alien child sniffed it, took a bite, and visibly brightened. The tension in the room dropped by a fraction. It was fragile. It was messy, but it was happening. A hush fell over the room. The engineers stopped hammering. The refugees looked up. Lyra walked in. She was not wearing the battle-scarred armor from the throne room, nor the terrifying ceremonial gown of the wedding. She wore a simple tunic of dark gray silk and trousers, her hair pulled back in a severe, practical knot. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her garnet eyes, and her movements lacked the liquid, predatory grace Noah was used to. She looked, for the first time, purely exhausted. She moved through the crowd, stopping to speak to the wounded, offering a hand to a human nurse, nodding at her own soldiers. She wasn't playing the goddess anymore. She was playing the captain of a lifeboat. She spotted Noah on the crate. Her face softened, the professional mask slipping just enough to reveal the girl underneath. She walked over to him. Crix, sensing the atmosphere, gathered his toaster rifle and scuttled away with a respectful click. "Hey," Noah said, standing up. He felt awkward, his hands seeking pockets that weren't there in his borrowed diplomat suit. "Hello," Lyra said. Her voice was quiet, barely audible over the hum of the ventilation fans. "You look like you haven't slept in 3 days," Noah said. "I haven't," she admitted. "There are many treaties to draft, many apologies to make. Director Sterling is currently in a brig, screaming about diplomatic immunity, and the High Council is debating whether to execute him or bill him for the carpet he ruined." Noah smiled. "Bill him. It hurts more." Lyra's lips quirked upward, a ghost of a smile. "I will take it under advisement." She looked at him, and the smile faded. Her gaze traced his face, lingering on the bruises on his jaw and the cut above his eyebrow. "Walk with me?" she asked. They left the hangar and walked to one of the observation decks that faced away from Earth, toward the endless star field. The corridor was quiet, lit by soft amber emergency lights. They stood by the viewport, watching the distant stars burning in the cold dark. "The shuttle is prepped," Lyra said suddenly. Noah froze. "What?" "The shuttle," Lyra repeated, keeping her eyes on the stars. "It leaves in 1 hour. It has clearance to land on the roof of your building. Your records have been scrubbed. Valor's fabricated evidence against you has been deleted. You are free." "Noah." Noah stared at her profile. She looked like a statue carved from sorrow. "You are sending me back?" Noah asked. "Just like that?" Lyra turned to face him. Her expression was fierce, almost angry. "Not just like that. It is the hardest thing I have ever done. But yes, I am sending you back." "Why?" Noah stepped closer. "We won. Lyra, we fixed the bond. We stopped the bad guys. Why are you pushing me away because you never had a choice?" Lyra's voice cracked. She took a breath, steadying herself. "Noah, look at how we met. I kidnapped you. I dragged you into a war. I used your blood to save my throne. I nearly killed you with the resonance. We chose to fight," Noah argued. "You fought to survive," Lyra countered. "You fought because you were cornered. Noah, my people. We have a history of taking things that do not belong to us. We chain species to our will. We consume." She reached out, her hand hovering near his face but not touching him, as if she were afraid she would burn him. "I want you." "Noah," she whispered, the confession tearing out of her. "I want you so much it terrifies me. When you are near me, the hunger and the loneliness vanish. You make me feel whole. But if I keep you here, if I let you stay just because I need you, then I am no better than Valor. I am just a different kind of parasite." Noah looked at her. He saw the depth of her love in her refusal to claim him. She was breaking her own heart to ensure his freedom. "So I go back to mopping floors?" Noah asked softly. "You go back to your life," Lyra said. "You go back to the world you know. You decide who you are when there is no gun to your head and no queen in your mind. You deserve to be ordinary, Noah. You deserve peace." She stepped back, creating a physical distance between them. "Go," she said. "Please, before I lose the strength to let you." Noah looked at her for a long moment. He wanted to argue. He wanted to grab her hand and tell her that he had already chosen. But he saw the desperation in her eyes. She needed to know that he was free. She needed to know that if he ever stood by her side, it wasn't because of a genetic program or a desperate escape. but because he walked there on his own 2 feet. "Okay," Noah said. His voice was hollow. Lyra nodded, tears shining in her eyes but not falling. "Goodbye, Noah. Goodbye, Lyra." He walked away. He didn't look back, because he knew if he did, he would never leave. The transition from the obsidian grandeur of the alien flagship to the stained concrete of Earth was jarring. Noah stood on the roof of the Zephyr Towers. The shuttle that had dropped him off had vanished back into the clouds, leaving only a swirl of mist. The wind-up here smelled of diesel and wet pavement. He took the service elevator down. It was working, which was a surprise. He unlocked the door to his apartment. It smelled of stale air and the garbage he hadn't taken out before he was kidnapped. His cat, wait, he still didn't have a cat. The apartment was exactly as he had left it. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat on the counter, now sporting a fuzzy mold ecosystem. His computer monitor was blinking with a screensaver. It was small. It was silent. It was safe. Noah walked to the window and looked out at the city. The neon lights flickered. The sirens wailed in the distance. A billboard across the street flashed a new ad. Bioenhancement clinics, now open 24 hours. He walked into the bathroom and splashed water on his face. He looked in the mirror. The face staring back was the same, but the eyes were different. They looked older. They looked like they had seen nebulae explode and empires fall. "I am just a janitor," Noah whispered to the reflection. The words felt like a lie. They felt like a coat that was 3 sizes too small. He spent the next 2 days trying to fit back into the box. He went to work. His boss, a man named Henderson who had the personality of a wet sponge, yelled at him for being absent without leave. Noah just nodded, apologized, and picked up his mop. He scrubbed the floors. He fixed a flickering light in the hallway. He listened to his neighbors gossip in the laundry room. "Did you see the news?" Mrs. Higgins was saying, clutching her basket of towels. "They say the government signed a treaty with aliens. Real aliens. It is just a hoax." Mr. Chen grumbled. "Project Bluebeam. It is all holograms. I heard they are tall," Mrs. Higgins whispered conspiratorially, "and beautiful, and they eat electricity." Noah kept his head down, folding his rags. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell them that they didn't eat electricity. They ate resonance. He wanted to tell them that the treaty wasn't a hoax. It was written in a room with a cracked window by a girl who cried when she thought no one was looking. But he said nothing. He was ordinary. That was the deal. On the 3rd night, the weight became unbearable. Noah dragged the heavy gray trash bin toward the rear loading dock. The wheels squeaked, screech, 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 the soundtrack of his former life. He pushed open the heavy steel doors and stepped out into the alley. It was raining again. The water mixed with the grime on the ground, creating swirling patterns of oil. The air smelled of wet cardboard and frying grease. Noah heaved the bags into the compactor. 1, 2, 3. They felt light, absurdly light. He remembered how heavy they had felt a week ago, like they were filled with lead and disappointment. Now, they were just trash. The real weight was in his chest, a heavy, cold stone where the resonance used to be. He kicked the empty bin against the wall and leaned back, looking up. The sky was a bruised purple, choked with smog. But if he squinted, he could see the faint moving light of the orbital station passing overhead. "I was just taking out the trash," Noah said to the empty alley. He waited. He didn't know what he was waiting for. A sign? A voice? He realized then that Lyra was right. He had needed to come back. He had needed to feel the smallness of this life to understand that he didn't fit inside it anymore. You couldn't unsee the stars. You couldn't unfeel the connection of two souls merging in the dark. He wasn't a janitor who had stumbled into an adventure. He was a partner who had been sent home for his own good, and he was miserable. I am not ordinary, he shouted at the sky, and I do not want to be safe. The air rippled. It wasn't the violent tear of the first time. It was a gentle shimmer, like heat rising off pavement. The rain seemed to pause in midair. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by a low, musical vibration that Noah felt in his teeth. A figure stepped through the wall. She wasn't wearing armor. She wasn't wearing a royal gown. She was wearing a pair of black cargo pants and a leather jacket that looked suspiciously like it had been bought at a human thrift store. Her hair was loose, damp from the rain she had stepped into. Lyra. She looked nervous. The vampire queen of the Noctur, who had stared down an army, looked like she was afraid he might tell her to leave. "Hi," she said. Noah pushed himself off the wall. "Hi, Lyra cleared her throat. "I was in the neighborhood. Diplomatic mission. We are establishing an embassy in the warehouse district." "An embassy," Noah repeated, fighting the smile that was threatening to split his face. "Yes," Lyra said, fidgeting with the zipper of her jacket. "The new treaty requires ambassadors of emotional diplomacy. It is a very specific clause." Noah took a step toward her. "Is it?" Lyra looked at him, her garnet eyes searching his face. "I tried, Noah," she whispered, dropping the pretense. "I tried to let you go. I sat in my tower and told myself I was doing the noble thing, but the silence, it is so loud without you." She took a shaky breath. "I promised I wouldn't chain you," she said. "But I didn't promise I wouldn't come back and ask if you wanted to be chained voluntarily. Or not chained, partnered." Noah laughed. It was a sound of pure relief. "You are terrible at this," he said. "I am new to asking for things," she admitted. "I am used to taking." She stepped closer, the rain glistening on her pale skin. "Noah, I am scared," she confessed. "I am a predator. It is biology. There is a part of me that will always want to consume you. If you come with me, you have to know that." Noah closed the distance between them. He stood right in front of her, close enough to smell the ozone and the rain. "Then make me a promise," Noah said. "Anything," Lyra breathed. "Promise me that if I ever say no, if I ever say stop, you will listen. No matter how hungry you are, no matter how much the resonance sings, you stop." Lyra nodded solemnity. "I swear it. On my life, on my crown. And one more thing," Noah said. "What?" "Promise me you won't let me shrink," Noah said. "Promise me you won't let me hide behind you. If I come with you, I am not a pet. I am not a battery. I am the guy who hacks the door while you fight the bad guys. I am the equal." Lyra smiled, and it was blinding. It lit up the dingy alley brighter than any neon sign. "I promise," she said. "I do not want a pet, Noah. I want the man who told a room full of emperors to go to hell." She reached out her hand. It was trembling slightly. Noah looked at her hand. He looked at the trash bin. He looked at the wet pavement where his life had started and ended and started again. He took her hand. The shock was immediate. The shock. It wasn't the overwhelming surge of the battle, but a warm, steady hum. It felt like a key turning in a lock. It felt like the missing piece of a puzzle sliding into place. "You smell like home," Noah whispered, pulling her closer. Lyra let out a sob that turned into a laugh. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. "And you?" She mumbled into his jacket, "Smell like garbage and rain, and the most beautiful thing I have ever found." She pulled back to look at him. Her eyes were shining. "Are you sure?" she asked. "There is no going back this time. No more secret apartments. No more safety." "Safety is overrated," Noah said. "I have a spaceship to catch." He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a collision. It was a claiming that went both ways. It tasted of rain and electricity and a hunger that they finally, truly understood. It was dangerous, yes, but it was the danger of standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you had wings. They broke apart, breathless, foreheads resting against each other. The ripple in the wall widened, revealing the soft amber light of the corridor beyond. "Ready?" Lyra asked. Noah looked back at the alley one last time. He looked at the compactor. "Hey, Lyra, yes? If we are going to build a new era of peace and prosperity," Noah said, squeezing her hand, "we really need to do something about the trash pickup schedule in this sector." "It is criminal." Lyra laughed, a sound that echoed like music. "I will put it on the agenda, Ambassador." Hand in hand, they stepped through the shimmering veil. The darkness of the alley swallowed the empty space where they had stood, leaving only the rain, the distant sirens, and the faint lingering scent of ozone and hope. Noah did not look back. He was already home,